She was just 13, a straight-A student, loved by everyone, and days away from her 14th birthday. But instead of celebrating, her family was planning a funeral. What happened to Kimmani Latig didn't just shake her neighborhood, it exposed something far darker. A missing child, a house full of warning signs, and a father whose actions raised more questions than answers. At first, it looked like a tragic disappearance, but within days, it turned into one of the most disturbing investigations the city had ever seen. And the more details came out, the more obvious it became this wasn't just a case of a runaway girl. This was something much worse. It all started on March 17th, when Kimmani's grandmother, Dorothy Latig, came home from work to something that didn't make sense. The front door was unlocked. The stove was still on. The smell of gas filled the kitchen. Kimmani wasn't there. Her glasses, which she couldn't see without, were on the table. Her clothes and underwear were tossed across the couch, pajamas on the dining room floor. The whole house was a mess, and it looked like someone had left in a hurry or hadn't planned to leave at all. Dorothy didn't wait. She called the police right away and reported Kimmani missing. She also started calling family members, putting up flyers, and begging for the public's help. Meanwhile, Kimmani's mother, Tiara, was heartbroken. She had just seen her daughter 2 days earlier, and now she was gone. But something about the timeline wasn't adding up. And what police would uncover next would take a dark turn. When Kimmani disappeared, her father, Darnell Jones, didn't stay quiet. He went on the news, pleading for help, saying he just wanted his daughter home safe. According to him, the last time they spoke was on the night of March 16th. She had called scared, saying someone might be trying to break into the house. So Darnell says he drove over with his cousin to check on her. He claimed they stayed for a bit, then left around 12:30 a.m. But here's where things get strange. He never called the police. He didn't alert her mother or grandmother. And if your daughter tells you she's terrified someone's trying to get inside the house, do you just leave her alone in the dark? Investigators immediately flagged the story. There were too many gaps, too many things he couldn't explain. And when Kimmani's grandmother came home just a few hours later, the house was a disaster and Kimmani was already gone. What happened during those missing hours? No one knew for sure. But police had a theory, and Darnell was at the center of it. As the investigation picked up, Darnell's behavior became harder to ignore. Sources close to the case said he was acting nervous, paranoid even, and then came a major red flag. He asked his girlfriend to turn off all the security cameras in her house. That alone raised suspicions, but what happened next made it worse. According to her, Darnell showed up, opened the back of his SUV, and started moving things into her basement. He brought in a large rubber mat, the kind used to protect the seats when hauling something dirty or heavy. He also hid a pair of work boots, covered in dried mud. Thing is, Darnell hadn't worked in weeks. So where did the mud come from? And what was on that mat that made him so desperate to hide it? The girlfriend didn't keep quiet. She left the cameras on. She kept the footage. And later, she gave everything to the police. It was no longer just a missing person case. The signs were pointing to something much more sinister. On March 24th, just a week after she vanished, the search for Kimmani came to a heartbreaking end. Her body was found in an abandoned home on Miami Street in North Toledo. The building was old, cold, and forgotten. And inside, police found something they'll never forget. Kimmani had been brutally attacked. According to the coroner, she had multiple incised wounds to the neck. There were also clear signs of sexual assault and mutilation. Her hands, her body. It was too much for officers to even describe publicly. One detective called it the worst scene I've ever witnessed. What had started as a desperate search was now a full-on homicide investigation. And at the center of it all stood one man, the last person to see her alive, her father. But instead of helping police, he disappeared. And what he did next sent the case spiraling into chaos. As the investigation zeroed in on Darnell, he vanished. No calls, no cooperation, just gone. That's when police officially charged him with abduction and issued a warrant for his arrest. But by the time they knocked on his door, he was already to our south in Columbus. U.S. Marshals and a SWAT team tracked him down. And when they found him, it didn't end quietly. Body cam footage shows Darnell refusing to cooperate. Officers shouting, "Show me your hands." "Don't move," but instead of complying, he reached into his pocket. In that split second, they made a decision. They opened fire. Darnell was hit. He survived, but ended up in critical condition at the hospital. Later, it turned out he hadn't pulled a weapon. It was a walkie-talkie. But with everything on the line, the officers weren't taking any chances. And while Darnell lay in a hospital bed, someone else came forward with a story that would change everything. Just days after the standoff, Darnell's girlfriend finally spoke, and what she shared turned the case upside down. She told police that Darnell had called her on the Friday before his arrest, sounding panicked. He begged her to turn off the security cameras in her house. She didn't. Something felt off, so she kept them rolling, and thank God she did. That night, a relative saw Darnell pulling items from his SUV. He rolled up a large rubber mat, the kind used in SUVs when you're hauling something messy, and stashed it under the basement stairs. Then came his work boots, still caked in mud, even though he hadn't worked in weeks. After hiding the items, he disappeared. Didn't answer calls, didn't explain. Nothing until he called her from Columbus. She gave the police his location. She handed over the security footage. She gave them everything they needed. She didn't protect him. She didn't cover for him. And that decision may have saved the entire investigation. But even with all that, there was still one question haunting everyone. Could this have been prevented? As painful details surfaced, one truth became impossible to ignore. Kimmani didn't just fall through the cracks, she was pushed through them. Teachers had raised concerns long before she vanished. They noticed changes. She became quiet, withdrawn, sometimes anxious. There were signs, real signs. Some of her teachers even reported what they saw to Child Protective Services. And nothing happened. The reports were dismissed. No follow-up, no visit, no intervention. Whatever system was supposed to protect her, it didn't. Now, with the tragedy fully exposed, community leaders began asking the hard questions. How many people failed this girl? How many ignored the warnings? And could all of this have been stopped before it ever began? Council members called it heartbreaking. Social workers admitted the breakdown. And residents were left furious, not just with the crime, but with the silence that came before it. But in the middle of all that grief, something unexpected began to happen. Toledo wasn't just grieving, it was shaken to its core. Neighbors who had never even met Kei'Mani stopped by the abandoned house where she was found. They brought flowers, stuffed animals, candles, handwritten notes. A candlelight vigil was held right outside that house. Prayers were spoken, tears were shed. You could feel the heartbreak hanging in the air. She was just a child, one speaker said. A little girl who deserved a future. Her school had planned to give her a kindness award that week. She was on the honor roll. She played basketball. She helped her classmates. She had everything ahead of her. And in one violent act, it was all taken away. The tragedy sparked conversations across the city. Not just about Kei'Mani, but about every child in danger who isn't being heard. Community leaders started calling for reform. People demanded better systems, stronger responses, and real accountability. Because for many, this wasn't just about Kei'Mani. It was about making sure no other child is ignored the way she was. And while her family prepared to say goodbye, The rest of the city was left asking, how do we make sure this never happens again? Kimmani Latig was only 13. She never got to grow up. Never got to drive a car, go to prom, graduate, or chase her dreams. She was kind, smart, loved. And now she's gone, not because no one saw it coming, but because too many people looked the other way. Her story isn't just about one terrible night. It's about the moments before, when she showed signs of distress. It's about the reports that were filed and ignored. It's about a system that watched her slip through its hands and didn't move fast enough. Kimmani didn't need the world to save her. She just needed one adult to speak up and be taken seriously. Now, her name is a symbol, not just of tragedy, but of what happens when we assume someone else will step in. If you know a child going through something, don't stay silent. Because no one ever thinks it'll happen until it does. She should still be here. And the fact that she's not should change everything.